Okay, our last candidate for the evening, Mr. Ricky Birt. Mr. Birt, tell us a little bit about yourself and describe your personal involvement with the community and schools in the past 5 years.
Thank you, Mr. Devine. I first want to thank you and the entire NTA for hosting us here this evening, and I certainly want to thank our community for turning out for this event. Our district is a great place to grow up, a great place to raise our students, and hopefully a great place to work. And certainly by being here this evening and seeing the support, I thank you for taking an investment in our students and the direction of our district. 4 years ago, I asked this community to kind of take a chance to vote for a young 18-year-old recent graduate who had a passion for working with our students, for working with our staff, and in this community, they elected me. So for the last 4 years, I've been working as a board member in a variety of aspects. I've been involved not only on the board, but in our community aspects, announcing various events, cheerleading competitions, middle school football games, and the like. I've been involved with our various groups and associations, helping out with our band fest and other community events. I've worked in our community through our Lions Club and other social groups to really make sure that our community has an active voice, not only what happens here in our district, but throughout the community as well. As a recent graduate, I've been able to use my experience and knowledge in being able to help our students be college and career ready, moving forward with what the needs of our 21st century learners are. I've also been able to put together my political science experience. I'm a 2013 grad from Birt, Tiger Up. 2013 grad from the great university here in Springfield, and I've been able to use that political science knowledge to be involved in the legislative process, both through the Ohio School Board Association and in my own free time and work. So now that I'm a big boy, I have a job working as the Midwest Education Outreach Coordinator for Impact Teen Drivers, a national 501c3, while I oversee our Teen Safe Driving Operations as a nonprofit administrator here across the Midwest, working in various states. In that capacity, I write grants, oversee public relations, community relations, and government relations to make effective use of tax dollars and oversee the operations of teen traffic safety experts.
What are your motivations in seeking a position for the Northwestern Board of Education?
Absolutely. You know, as I said, I think what makes Northwestern most unique is our community. I've had the opportunity to grow up here, to have many of our staff as teachers, to call many of my neighbors as friends. And now that I've moved into the next chapter of my life, I've bought a home here in the Northwestern District. And what makes this so unique is that I have a unique vantage point, as I said a moment ago, as a recent graduate, to use my experience as a Northwestern proud alumni, as a recent college graduate, and as a young professional, to help mold our students, craft our policy, and shape the direction of our district. Because over the last 4 years I've been a member of your board, what I found most rewarding is working with our students. Going in and talking with our students about science projects, helping them launch rockets, going and talking about local government, reading to a second grade class. And each time I see a face of a student who really gets it, who sees that excitement, who, when I'm able to chat with a teacher or chat with a parent about what's going on, I become re-energized in what we do here at Northwestern. I'm able to see the great things that we're doing, and I'm able to see the fingerprints of our warriors all throughout our children's lives, what they do here while they're at Northwestern, and as they move forward.
What do you think the number one issue is facing the Northwestern School District?
I think whenever you're running a multi-level agency, communication is always essential. Communication between the various stakeholders, both the community, which would be external and also internal, making sure that our staff has the ear of the board, making sure our community has the ear of the board, and there are proper relationships between all channels. So that when our community has a question, when they've got a concern, they can feel free to pick up a phone. They can stop by a house. They can stop you at Walmart or Kroger's, stop you at the football game and say, hey, you know, Rick, I got this question. I heard that this is going on. Can you give me a little more information? When we have teachers saying, you know, I really heard this. Can you clarify that? Making sure that people feel confident that you're approachable as a board member and that there's proper communication between our administration and the board is also key. I've found that by empowering our board to lead our district effectively, by working with our administration and our other partners throughout the community, that's what's really essential. And I think that there are challenges in that when you have new situations taking place, when you have multiple opinions, when you've got a vantage point and a direction where you need to go. So by working collaboratively, making sure we have those open lines of communication, I think that's how we're going to be able to overcome that greatest challenge of keeping good communication.
Okay, this question comes from the community. In words you believe we might understand, explain to us how school systems are funded.
How long do we have?
16 minutes.
16 minutes, all right. So I will tell you that as a board member, I am still learning how schools are funded because it is an ever-evolving, ever-changing system. Here in Ohio, we rely on a multi-tier approach for funding, both coming from the local level, our property taxes and our income, state funding, which would be, of course, our per pupil values, and then also the federal level, where we receive special programs and grants. When you look at that collaborative effort and you bring those three sources together, that's where you see how schools are funded. Now, understanding those exact formulas are why we hire, fire, and evaluate our superintendent and treasurer to really act as the chief guidance officer directing the board on how to properly execute those funds and demonstrate those responsibilities to the community. You know, that's why it's so important that we continue to look at our income tax as a solid motivator for how we fund our schools, because it will adjust as we continue to see more growth, economic growth in our community. It's important that we work with our county auditor and county officials to make sure our property values are fairly and equally distributed and they're properly evaluated, so that our school district has the resources that it needs. And it's also important that we continue as board members to keep an ear to Washington, monitor current and future legislation, so that we've got an eye and an ear to what's coming down the pike in those three various formats of funding.
Fiscal concerns are always an issue with school districts. With that said, if money was in short supply and it was necessary to make substantial cuts in the expenditures of the district, what areas would you cut and what areas would you seek to preserve?
You know, I think that it's a very delicate balancing act that you have to run, because each time that we bring a dollar into this district, that's at the sacrifice of one of our community members, whether it's through the earned income tax or the property tax value. So we need to make sure that we're being solid conservatives and being very mindful and being good stewards of how we use those tax dollars. But I think one area that we can always look to use is through shared services, monitoring what other districts are doing and seeing how we can collaboratively work together to make sure that there are redundancies. Many districts are looking at sharing administration and other avenues. I think you have to think creatively about how we can work together, because dollars are short across all levels of government. And I think you have to think about what options are on the table, what can we explore, where can we partner, and then, of course, what do you preserve? I think that's easy, preserve the classroom. Because at the end of the day, we're an entity that provides a service. And what goes into that classroom is certainly important, whether that's the resources, staff, and personnel. Also understanding that our support staff are absolutely critical in that process, because a student cannot learn if they don't get on the bus and they don't get here. A student cannot learn if they don't have that support of a clean school or a good lunch. So understanding that the operational maneuver of the district revolves around that classroom and preserving that classroom at all costs.
Okay, this next question comes from the community. Can you name 3 things in your life that you are committed to?
I think that's pretty easy. The first one would be my faith. I'm very active mainly in Church of God, and certainly am thankful that I have a great Christian fellowship there to be supportive of. My second would be my family. I'm very blessed with a great family that's been supportive of all of my efforts and my involvement. And the third would be my career, where I see great passion in what I do, not only as a nonprofit administrator, but as a member of the board, as a support role, and I would prioritize those probably in that order.
Many states are passing legislation to enact right to work laws, which changes the role the unions play in many workplaces. What is your opinion on right to work?
Absolutely. As a political science major, I spent a lot of time looking at this, and I dabbled in quite a few education classes. If you go back and look throughout the history of the United States, there's been a great value put on workers' unions, workers' associations. And over time, the value of those associations came from finding a collective voice in arguing and being an authority voice before administration and leaders. And as we look specifically at education, that's been critical, so that through one voice we can collectively bargain, that we can find common concerns and work collectively to preserve the educational setting, to find solutions to common problems, and then also work to obviously better the education of our children. So I think that there is certainly a value to union and preserving the important relationship between the board, in this case, and the association. And I think right to work can be a very dangerous piece, because it challenges that relationship. And so we need to find ways, and this is certainly something that we need to continue to encourage our state and federal legislators to continue to monitor, is we need to find ways to collectively work together to preserve that relationship between our collective group, our associations, and the board, so that we do have those open lines of communication that I talked about, that we've got that collective voice, but also be mindful at the end of the day that we're here for the kids. And we need to make sure that we're keeping in check our egos and our balance of power, so that at the end of the day, the board is still held accountable to the community for the action of the district.
board member has many responsibilities, one of which is to lobby for education. If elected, how will you lobby for education both at the local level and at the state level?
You know, we live in a great country with freedoms like no other, and I am so excited. I have a great relationship with all of our elected officials. If you talk to Ross McGregor, Chris Wagner, John Boehner, I've had lunch with him on numerous occasions. So I think it's about being seen as a critical cog in the educational avenue. And certainly I think if you talk to any of those gentlemen, if you explore the numerous nuances of our state board, you'll see that there is a true value in the local level. Because right here, in this building, this is where the rubber hits the road. This is where true education happens. And this is where real responsibility is done. And certainly, as I mentioned, this is where most of the funding comes for education as well. So I think it's important that we have those relationships and we continue to preserve those relationships with with our elected officials and with our other stakeholders at the elected level, so that we can, when we have a concern, we can pick up our phone and call Chris Wagner on his cell phone, or we can shoot them an email and know that Robert and Megan are his staffers, and know that these are the proper avenues to explore so that our voices and the voices ultimately of our community and the voices of our district can be heard. I think it's all about relationships.
This next question comes from the community. How do you feel about the extra 30 minutes added to the school day?
One of the classes that I took at Wittenberg was called 21st Century Learning. And as you explore the numerous nuances of education, one countermeasure that is proven again and again to work is adding extra classroom instruction time to the student day to improve student performance. I think that research has continued to prove that by giving teachers the time to do what they're best at, to work with our kids, to provide that supplemental instruction, to provide time in the seat, we're able to really be successful in what we do and improve ultimately our test scores and improve our accountability to our community. However, I think that whenever you implement a change, there are always things that can be made. Make no mistake, I'm in favor of those 30 minutes. But I think it's important that we open lines of communication out to our community to say, what can we do better? Are there other ways that we can explore this? Can we look at alternative start times, alternative mechanisms, where we can use that 30 minutes maybe in a more collaborative way, in a way that maybe doesn't have such an impact on our families? Because I think sometimes we become so focused on looking at the nuances of literature and looking at test scores that we become blind to the needs of our families. I certainly understand that by the time our kiddos get home, it's late, you have to fix dinner, you have to do homework, you have to go to the ball game, the dance recital, all those other nuances. And there are precious hours that our kids need to spend with their folks at home. So I think we need to think, again, collaboratively. I hate to keep using the same phrases, but I think they're so important, that we think collaboratively about opening our doors and having open and honest conversations with our community about, we want to improve student performance, but at what cost does that happen? How can we work together and brainstorm across the district to think about how to utilize that 30 minutes in a more effective way?
Describe a decision made by the board in the recent past that you think should have gone differently.
One of the double-edged swords of being a board member is that you're one of five, and that your whole intent, my moral compass has always been to do what's best for our students and provide student support, student outlook, and always be student-centered in everything we do. In recent months, we've made a decision as a board to lose our family liaison. And that position is one that our community saw great value in. And I think that we have tried to work collectively to support that role. But I think that there are still gaps that we can continue to see, and I think there are ways that we can continue to see needs that our families have in this day and age that may not always be covered. I am very saddened that we lost that position, and I am thankful for our staff that has come together and worked collaboratively to try to fill that void. But as I spoke, and as you will see in the minutes, I spoke in a very high favor of that position and preserving it. And so now that that decision's been made, the challenge is how do we move forward as a community, constantly reevaluating the needs of our students, talking with our staff about what gaps we're seeing in our student achievement and in our student performance, talking with parents and saying, what kind of social services do you need that we can help you be a voice for? While certainly we want to be good stewards of our community dollars, I think that it's been evident that we have, and we need to continue to find ways to put our students' needs first. And while there are tough decisions that have to be made, the important thing is that we come together after those decisions are made and move forward with a collective voice of always doing what's best for our students.
Discuss how valuable you believe student performance on standardized tests is a means of determining teachers' competence.
I read somewhere that a standardized test is a thermometer reading, but observing a teacher is like watching global warming. I think it's important to note that looking at a test score is just a snapshot of what student performance is. I think there are a number of other indicators and proven effective methods that are evidence-based that we can use to really guide our student performance and measure how well our staff is doing. We have a great program called Literacy Collaborative. Whether you're a fan or not, it's a great mechanism to really guide our students' performance and see how growth is being achieved over their time here at Northwestern. So I think that while it's important that we continue to obviously follow state law and advocate for Common Core standards and looking at achieving those benchmark tests and reaching all those other pieces, my focus will continue to be on value added, the element of test scores that looks at the growth of the student. Because it's one thing if they miss it by a point or two, but if I can see that there's true magic that's happening in that classroom, where there's good things that's happening, our students are growing, to me that's a lot more important than meeting that and checking that box. And while we will continue to make sure that we've got all the resources in place to make sure that we're meeting those tests and we're recording the grade levels that our community deserves, I think that we need to remember that as we continue to watch education evolve, and as we watch our community and culture evolve, that there are other ways to show that students are learning, how they're growing, like on the soccer field, the volleyball court, the student council room, SAT chapter meetings. There are lots of ways that our students are being active and blossoming here at Northwestern, and those test scores are just, as I said, a snapshot, a thermometer reading of their growth.
Okay, it's the last question prior to your final statement. This comes from the community. I'm not always sure my voice is being heard. How can you ensure me you will listen and respond?
Birt at northwestern.k12.oh.us, 937-308-5646. All I can do is share my personal contact information with you. If you call me, if you email me, if you stop me at Walmart or Kroger's, I will be more than happy to listen. I will investigate, we'll find a way to get to the bottom of your concern. It may not be a problem that is easily resolved, but we will certainly make sure that your concern, your issue is looked into. It's looked into by our administration, by our superintendent and treasurer, that we're involved as a board if need be following that chain of command, and that we're available to be accountable and accessible to you as the community. Because at the end of the day, again, I think it's all about community and making sure that we're working together. It's the whole point of a community school. It's the whole point of a public school, is that we can work together to provide for the common defense and promote the general welfare, to paraphrase the Constitution, so that we've got all the resources that our parents need, both in the classroom, outside the classroom, both inside the school and outside the school. If you call me, I'll be there.
Okay, you have 3 minutes for any final statements.
Absolutely. I again want to thank our association, and again, you folks for being here tonight. I would ask you to go to Birt. And I would ask that for a number of reasons. First of all, I continue to be resolved to do what's best for our community. I'm humbled that you've entrusted me with your most valuable possessions, your children, as a member of the school board. I think it's important that we continue to have those open lines of communication, those paraphrases of importance, those shared values, so that we can continue to do what's best for our students and best for our community. Because as you look around, these new buildings are just a symbol of the great things that we can achieve together. And I'm so indebted to you for your support, both not only of this evening, but all that you continue to do for our students. Whether it's attending different events or different activities by your generous tax dollars, or your other nuances that make Northwestern what it is. I ask for your trust for 4 more years to continue to guide our district, to provide what little knowledge I have, my little expertise, so that we can continue to have a community that we can be proud of, and we can continue to show we can't just hide that word pride. Thanks so much.